Okay. All right. So to begin with, I'm Jodi, and I live with a severe mental illness. I put this picture up because it's the time of year that there's so much life that is smiling. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, a writer from a long time ago, said, "The earth laughs in flowers." And I just thought that was perfect because I am smiling today. It's a beautiful day outside, and I wanted to show you what we're having now that's after such a long time in winter. It's a new season of hope. It's a new season of wonder. COVID has really dragged us down. It really has. So many more people are affected by mental illness. They're just so tired. And being able to come in a community like this, we haven't done for so long. It's just such a wonderful thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. And if you have any questions at all, we'll do it like really informally. And raise your hand, and I am willing to share. So you be brave too. So E.E. Cummings is a poet, and I am a poet, and I love poetry. And he said, "To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everyone else means to fight the hardest battle that any human being has fought and never stop fighting." It took a long time for me not to hide my illness. And my illness is part of me. It's part of who Jodi is now. It's just something that I have struggled with. I have good days, I have bad days, I have really bad days, and I have really good days. I have bipolar and PTSD. And part of being Jodi is that with the trauma that I've had through PTSD, I've had induced voices that I hear every day. And I've hid that for years and years. I didn't want anyone to know that. I didn't want you to know that I'm hearing things, but it sounds like another voice in the room. I hear that. And when my second book of poetry came out, I said, I can't hide anymore. It's too hard to try to always smile. I want to share with people. I want to be part of community. I want us to help each other. And so I started talking. J.M. Storm wrote, "She is a beautiful piece of broken pottery, put back together by her own hands. And the critical world judges her cracks while missing the beauty of how she made herself whole again." And healing for me starts with communities. This is a community here. St. John Vienna has been my community for over 20 years, and I embrace this family. And I want to share with this family and see if there's other people that are still hiding, who might sit in the pews next to me, wishing someone understood. So I'm starting to talk to more and more people. A couple weeks ago, there was a lady up in the pew next to me, and she looked like she was really nervous and like didn't know, she didn't look comfortable. So after Mass, I went over and introduced myself and just shook her hand, and she smiled. So just that little bit of community together made her feel at ease. So, and it helped me to feel good. Part of my illness, I have been hospitalized for over 40 times. I have been at, well, it used to be Mary Fletcher, but Fletcher Island. And I've been Barco Retreat, and I've been down in Baltimore to a PTSD clinic. When I get to some point in my life, when the voices are too much, maybe I'm hearing them more than once or twice a day, or I just can't do it alone anymore, I go and re-examine medication, and I find a community in the hospital with people who are going through the same thing. So has anyone heard of the Bridge Builder poem? Anyone heard that one? In 1930, Will Allen Dromgoole wrote this poem, and I'm going to read it to you because it will make sense, okay? "An old man going a lone highway came in the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim, But he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. "Old man," said a fellow pilgrim near, "you are wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at evening tide?" The builder lifted his old gray head. "Good friend, in the pack I have come," he said. "There followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that is meant as naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him." We're all bridge builders, aren't we? I decided I'm sharing my bridge. I'm going to see people who are coming after me who maybe can decide earlier than I did that they can share themselves too. That they don't have to hide. That they don't have to be scared of stigma. That they can say, "I'm hurting. And I need someone to listen to me. And I need to go get help. And I don't want to be afraid to get help and be judged." I felt shame. I hid the voices for so long. I felt fear and guilt. 10 years ago, I started writing a book called Living with the Neighbors. Now, in my book, the neighbors are the voices that I hear. It's as if I lived in an apartment, and through the wall, I was hearing noises. I was hearing the neighbors. So if I can think of it as just noise that can't hurt me, then I feel safer. Because they say, "You're no good." They say you're evil. They say you should die today. And they say it again and again. And it sounds like it's the men voices that hurt me. And so 10 years ago, I went to this place called Alyssum that I'll talk about a little later in Rochester, Vermont. And I said, I'm going to share this story. I'm going to write this. And I started writing. Rochester, Vermont is a little valley between two big mountain things. And there's a river, and it was just beautiful. And so I wrote my book. When I was a child, I didn't have a lot of skills, so I did a lot of hiding. But one of the things in my backyard was I had a weeping willow tree. And in my book, I have a poem. My book is prose and a little bit of poetry in between. And so I have a poem called The Willow that I'm going to share with you. As a child, I slipped between branches of a willow tree to sit hidden in its shadows drip over me in my backyard. I brought a pencil and pad to trace the outline of a story, the motion of a squirrel climbing, the clang of my dad's horseshoes hitting the metal ringer, or the whisper of my mom's hands digging in the garden just up the hill. I closed my eyes to brush against the long length of leaves, their soft green touch smooth, clean, a comfort in their being. I heard my older brother mowing the side yard, grinding the grass into the sweet memory that touched my nose. My sister painted butter on to burn in the sun. She flipped a teen magazine, the switch of each page silky against her hand, while my younger brother played matchbox cars between rows of beams, tracking the cars in the soil by mother. Within the willow's existence, I sat among the roots expelled like arms to hold me, to cradle me like my grandma used to. With fingers bent around a pencil, I breathed in the normalcy, the okay moments that didn't come from a brown bottle reeking of angry words, distorted thoughts and dark moments sit between bouts of us being okay. I wrote a song about the squirrel above me on a branch, bees coming out of the hive, a monarch splash of color like lipstick painting up the day. I licked my lips, hummed a bit as I wrote it down, tucked it against my stomach, and then hid it under my bed. At night I dreamt of middle America, where family debuted wishes and hopes for each other. I vowed to share my pieces I collected beneath the protection of my willow. Then I had his leaves bend down to circle me like an embrace, while I recovered and clung to its branches, even in sleep. When I used to sit under the willow, I didn't know why. I was really confused. I didn't know why I had all these depressing thoughts, this depression, and I didn't know how to explain it. When I was 17, I had my first hospitalization at Mary Fletcher. Well, that was my turn. What is it now? UVM. But at 17, I had my first suicide attempt. I couldn't feel the pain that I was feeling, and I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know what to do. I overdosed on alcohol and pills. My father and my friend and my boyfriend at the time talked to me. They got me to the hospital, and I was saved. When I was at the hospital, there was a community. I found another community. There were people building bridges that I could walk on. We shared part of ourselves. We built a bridge to cross together through the darkness we all feared. There was tons of teams at the time there. And when I was there, they didn't lock the door to let you out like they do now. And so 3 of us decided it had just started to snow. We wanted to touch the snow. So we decided we were going to leave the floor and go and touch the snow. I write about it in my book, so I'm going to read a little bit here. I pushed on the latch and breathed in the cool winter air as I made my way outside. My bare toes curled as I touched the white carpet of snow, so cold it felt sharp. I let out a high-pitched squeal and jumped from foot to foot through it. Grass and weeds cushioned my walk beneath the layer of snow, and it felt comforting. It felt real. I lifted my hands to the snow falling and watched the flakes wet my skin. It gave a much-needed voice to the sky. I didn't want this to end. I spun about in the white spot that lit up the darkness. It was beautiful. I looked over at my 2 new friends. One was smoking, of course, and one had her face turned to the falling snow. We were all just girls, just teens, just messed up. But out here, there were moments without doctors, moments without therapists in corduroys. Why do therapists always wear corduroys? Out here, there were no more med checks, no more shots, no more blood tests, and no more parents shaking their heads. I lifted my hands to the snow again, felt the flakes turn to water, dripping down my arms. An alarm sounded. They discovered we were missing, but we couldn't be seen yet, just girls playing in the snow. I remember that, and I've been 30-odd more times up there in different floors, but I remember that moment thinking, I am not alone. Other people are struggling. We're not talking about it, but other people are here. And I wanted it to continue. I didn't want to leave when I was there. I felt like it was a real community. I felt safe, probably for the first time. But we have to come together. We have to live together in a community. The hospital is a safety. It's not the real world. And we have to live out here. And so I am trying now to talk about the problems that I have, so other people who have those problems can be seen, can be heard, can say, that's how I feel. So right before COVID, I went to Danville, and I used to be part of a Light of the World retreat that this community has done. And if we can ever do it again, I highly recommend going. But I went to Danville, and I spoke about being nobody but Jodi. I spoke about embracing the good and the struggles and everything that makes you who you are. When I got done, a line formed nobody but Kathy. I am nobody but Mary. And they did. They hugged me and they said that. And this woman, she was a little bit bigger than me, and she came dancing over to me, and she said, honey, people have been trying to change me for years. I'm Louise, and I am nobody but Louise. And she picked me off the ground. But isn't that another community? I built a bridge to connect with these people that were strangers to me. Down in Danville, I've never really been to Danville, and we talked and we connected. And I want us to do that in more places. I want more and more people to share their stories and say, I am still part of this community, even though I struggle. One of the things that I like to do is write poetry. And Degas says, art is not what you see, what you make others see. So when I'm in the hospital, I meet a lot of friends, and they end up sticking around after. I find I have a lot of collection of people that I never would have known unless I had been in the hospital. So I call it a poetry movement, where I uplift others by writing poetry about how I see the beauty in that person over there, and I give them out. Well, I think it was maybe 8 years ago that I worked at Home Goods as a cashier at Christmas. And if you've never worked a holiday as a cashier in a store, I highly recommend it. But I was there and I had a name tag and it said Jodi. And this woman came up to me and she went, Jodi! And she came running over to me. And I'm like, hi, you! And she says, I haven't seen you in so long. And she starts talking and I have no idea who this woman is. But she opens her purse and she pulled out a poem that I had written to her when she was in the hospital with me at one of my stays. Now, if I've been there 40 times, I don't remember which stay with everybody. But it was a moment, it was a connection, it was something that I could say, I gave back. She carried it in her purse. And that meant something to her. There's beauty despite the struggles that we all face. I put this one on because there's a lot of beautiful pictures, and I wanted to reinforce life can be beauty. Life can be art. We all have this gift of beauty, of this life inside us, this precious gift of life. And we can in turn take all of our treasures, our talents, and give to other people. We can start sharing more. The world is made up of unique individuals that bring peace and beauty to one another. And that's what I'm trying to do. So by sharing my poetry, I try to give a positive light. I try to share with others to say, you are worth something. You may not see it yourself, but I see it. I see it in your eyes. I see it in the way you look. Even though you look lost today, there's still something in you. You're special. So, when my second book of poetry came out, it was called Faces in the Crowd. And I went to Montpelier and spoke. And I had a book signing. And this man came up to my table. It was an older man, white hair, white beard, suspenders, flannel shirt, real native Vermonter. And he said, I bought your book. And I went, thank you. And he said, well, I have a son. And he has schizophrenia. I don't know how to talk to him. I gave him your book, but he didn't call me. I said, okay, I'm sorry. What was I going to say? He goes, well, 2 weeks later, he called me, and I went over to his apartment, and we spent 2 hours talking about which poems were how he was feeling. And I wanted to thank you for that. And then he drifted into the crowd. That's something that I never would have known. But it's something that all of us have the power to do. All of us, we don't know the influence, that smile when you walked by a stranger, that book, that letter, that note, that Facebook post you put on. We don't know the power that we have to help people. I think it was 3 years ago that I was at Bradwell Retreat, and it was horrible. It was dirty. The windows were black. There was mold in the bathroom. The nurses and the staff hid behind the desk, did not come out. They didn't want to see us too much. They canceled groups all the time. And they had one computer for 60 people, so you gotta get on to write notes. And they had a limited amount of paper that they would let you have. And I like to write. So I was writing on the envelopes and cards that I was getting. But then I wrote poetry for some of the other patrons. And they started giving me their allotment of paper because they wanted those poems. So I started writing more. And I have a blog, and so I would put them on, and they'd be published. And they were really excited that they had something to be joyful about. So when I was there was a courtyard, and that was a really beautiful spot. And there were planted flowers that people were picking to give to me to thank me for the poetry. So in my room on the windowsill, I had a lot of styrofoam cups filled with color. So the day that I left, I was walking down with all of these styrofoam cups, and I went by a room and I went back. And there was a woman, she was probably in her 80s, and she had been there all week, but she had never left her room. And she was wearing paper clothes, like when you get the dentist bib from the dentist. She was wearing clothes like that. Nothing in her room but a toilet that she could use, and I brought her, and I said, "Excuse me, would you like a flower?" She sat up in bed. She said, "No one has ever given me a flower before." And I said, "Well, take them all." And she said, "No." And she walked over to me, to the door, and she said, "I just want the yellows." And so I gave her all the yellow flowers, and she put them on her desk in her empty room, and it was filled with the light of a smile on her face. And it was beautiful, and I'll never forget that. Just that connection. We formed a community. I built a bridge, and she followed me. We were able to connect and share something. I put this on because it's a yellow flower. Because, I think there's hope everywhere. Even in a dirty place like there that I was at, which I thought was unnecessary, they could have made it a lot easier. But anyway, there's always hope, even if you're in a really bad situation. So, when I was at Alyssa in Rochester, Vermont, it's a peer support farmhouse that anyone in Vermont can go for free. You can go for up to a week, I think. It's a farmhouse down by a river. And there's peer support of people that who are human, who have emotions, which could qualify for all of us, right? So anyone in Vermont who lives in Vermont and has emotions can go for a week free. So I went, and that's where I started reading and writing my book. I'm going to just read a part from the book about being at Alyssa when I went down to the river behind Alyssa, because I think nature is a powerful element of healing for so many. That's why I put that first picture of the flowers. Nature makes us laugh. I went down to the river. I walked over the flowers field littered with clay targets between broken corn stalks. Farmers' sons had had shooting practice. I steered away from the manure mound with flies and walked over the dry, cracked earth to the rocks. The river rocks shimmered, glared, all meshed together by its side. I was there watching the river twist and turn and race forward. Ever forward, no looking back. It wound its way to me and sprayed at the rocks. It seemed as if it was playing for me. I watched the rush of water minnows still in deep pools, a blanket of soggy sand. I should have brought a shovel. My heart tightened. It tore beneath my chest, ripped, sagged, and then tears trailed down my face. I cried to the river, watched life heavy as the rocks I stood by. I wanted to learn to dance like the river. I wanted to live like my children. I wanted to believe. Well, this is the river. Right there, I learned how to scream. And there's a movie called The Sure Thing. I don't know if anyone has seen it. But there's someone that tells them, you need to roll your windows down and yell it's Friday night. And for 30 years, my husband tried to get me to do that. And I never could. I never let go. But I was down at the river with peer support people who said, I have trauma. We can do this together. And we let go, and we screamed. We threw rocks and hurled, and I let the burden of my pain into the water that flowed. And I felt peace. So I wanted to share this with people. My faith is a big part of who I am. This community has been a safety for me. Robert Rogers said, my faith didn't remove the pain, but it got me through the pain. Trusting God didn't diminish or vanquish the anguish, but it enabled me to endure it. When I was I was there one time at Mother's Day, and I was at church because they used to take me to different places. And I felt, I'm Mother's Day, and I have 3 boys. They weren't with me. I'm alone at this church. And I'm sad about that. And there's nothing I can do. I can't pull myself up on my bootstraps. I need to get better somehow. It's going to take time. But once church got going and the rhythm of church, I knew, I felt like I wasn't alone. I was there with my Jesus, and I was there, and everyone else there was a community, and we shared a Mass. So Rachel says, healing may not be so much about getting better as about letting go of everything that isn't you. All the expectations, all the beliefs, and becoming who you are. I'm trying, and some days I've got it, I'm trying to be okay with who Jodi is. By sharing my story, sharing my struggles, seeing others and their stories, and seeing the connections we can make. Trying to embrace that I don't have to expect that I'm going to be perfect. And sometimes that's a really hard thing to come across, to accept. I have a blog that I write. It's kind of like a journal. It's jodigirouard.wordpress.com. I write about nature. I write about my faith. I write about being in bed with the covers over my head and wanting to die. I write about getting up out of that bed. I write about going back into that bed. Up and down, I do have bipolar, so I do ride that roller coaster. But I write it, and I have almost 400 followers that like the comment and that like it. Anyone can go on and look at it. It's very personal, and I just put it out there like my book. This is who Jodi is. This is how she's feeling. Today's a really great day, or maybe it's not. Does everybody know who this is? Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. He said, anything that is human is mentionable. And anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. So I talk about hearing voices. I brave judgments that yell at me every day. I hear the voices every day. There was a time when I went to Baltimore Clinic for PTSD that they put me on a medication and it made the voices go away. When I came home, I developed pericarditis, which is water around the heart, because of the medication. So they said, we can't take it anymore. They saved my life. I was pretty delirious. My husband brought me to the ER and I was saved. Happened to be a cardiologist in the ER that day, on call, and he diagnosed it. I think maybe God had a little something to do with that. So I talk. And I want you guys to talk too. If you have any questions or you're just wondering, you want to know something more, something that you want to share, I want you to be you. Be bravely yourself. Take a step. Reach out to someone in the pew that you have never met, a stranger. When I was 16, I was on Church Street. And I was really down. And I was so confused about my illness. I didn't understand what was going on. But the stranger came running up to me, handing out flyers. And he had a flyer that said, bloom where you're planted. And I kept that. It's still in a photo album. Like that lady at Home Goods. That meant something to me. I kept it. I think we all have moments where we can inspire one another, even if it's just listening. Emily Dickinson said, hope is a thing with flowers that purchase on the soul, that sings the tune without words and never stops at all. I believe in the unending determination of hope. I share my writing to encourage others to experience what they might not understand, or to realize they are not alone in their suffering. I will probably always hear voices, but I always will write. As long as my hands move, I will write and I will share. So this is Viva's Bridge. Has anyone heard of it before? This is in Barrows Falls, Vermont. And in 1930 it was built. And in 1930 it was the largest highway bridge in America. There's a plaque on that bridge that has the last stanza of the Bridge Builder poem that I read earlier. It says, why build this bridge at evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said. There followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that is been as naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him. We're all builders of a better today and a better tomorrow. I had to leave you with Mother Teresa, because isn't she wonderful? Everyone knows Mother Teresa. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. I choose to cast my stones today on making ripples of conversations that we can openly discuss mental illness. So I'm going to close with a poem that I wrote called Running Through Fields. We are all children running the fields of life. Some on worn paths, some in tall grass, still others roaming in wildflowers. But we are all here together, running through the fields of life. And some, the ones who see beyond the fields, they catch themselves in laughter and make chains with dandelions to wear upon their heads, casting off shoes to run barefoot in the wide variety of possibilities. I think this world is full of possibilities. Today is a possibility for me to share, and I thank you very much. Any questions? Anyone have any?
Hi, Jodi. Are you still to overcome daily things? Do you still how do you maintain sanity?
Do you daily overcome?
Some days I don't do well. Some days I am in bed and I don't want to get out. And I think I have learned over the years that, to think, it's just for today, but I get overwhelmed, and I get fearful, and I sometimes am afraid that I'm going to take my life. That's a reality to me. Suicide is something that I still think about, but I have such good days sometimes that I don't want to die. So on the days when I say, Jim, leave me in bed, I just want to die, I need to have him just be there with me. And sometimes for me, my husband and I have been married for 33 years, and he can work from home sometimes, and so that works for us, that he can be there and support me. Or there have been times when he worked at night, and I wasn't safe to be home with the kids because I was so sad. I would go to a friend's house, and they would watch the kids with me, and we would be okay. And then there are times when it's too much, and the days are getting more than 2 or 3 at one time, where I have to go and say, I can't do this alone. I have to go to the hospital. And so that's kind of how. So today was a really good day. I heard voices. I heard, Jodi, you are evil. You deserve to die. I hear that. You're no good. But I have lots of people to support me. And I think a community like St. John NAMI can be a really good opportunity for us to come together and talk. We can share these things and support one another. I don't have emotions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So was it ever diagnosed schizophrenia with the voices in your head?
It was, I've had a lot of diagnoses.
Yeah, because I have a nephew and a niece, and I mean, it's still a battle, but he's got a job, if he stays on his meds, he does great, but it was all this hearing the voices.
Yeah. They call me schizoaffective, which is not really schizophrenia, but it's kind of parts of it. Really, the last few years, they've been focusing on the trauma that I've gone through, and I've been doing different programs. Like, I've done ECT, which is electric shock. I've done it 3 different times. The first time it saved my life. The second time was really terrible. It was a horrible experience. And the third time, it worked again. So I've taken every medication there probably is. I've done every kind of therapy. I do therapy once a week. I do group therapy sometimes, and I have a psychiatrist. But I'm doing other things where I'm now on the Howard Center board. They were nominating me to be on the board, to have someone on the board who had lived experience to advocate for people who can't yet reach out and talk. So I do that. I volunteer for NAMI, and I share my story wherever I can to whoever wants to hear it. And I keep writing.
That's kind of a good therapy for you, right?
Yes.
Like poetry and nature.
Yes. Yes, I write a lot about nature and faith and hope, and I like to write about other people that I see. I'm kind of an observer. Like when I was a teenager, me and my sister would sit in the mall and watch people walk by. Anyone do that? We did. Look at her. Very good.
People watching is fun.
Yeah. So,
I liked what you were saying about smiling, because I worked in a nursing home for many, many years. And a lot of these people had nobody. And a lot of the staff thought, well, they knew the number of the room, but they didn't know the name. And I worked there for many years, and I could tell you what every person was, and what their room number was, and who their family was. And that was important to me, and I worked nights, so it gave me an opportunity to be with these people. When a lot of times they were awake, sometimes they were crying, and I could go in because I had the time.
yes.
There were no visitors, there wasn't a lot of doctors around, and even though we were very busy, had the time to give to them.
It would be a bridge builder. You're connecting them with someone who they needed to hear you, they needed to see you, they needed to be listened. And so many people, especially with COVID today, so many people want to be heard but don't know what to do. And now we have children who have been wearing masks and like developmentally speaking and all the problems that go with not being able to see a face, you know?
And in all my years of nursing, I still have people come up to me and say, oh, I remember you worked on such and such a floor, you took care of my mother. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I don't remember who you are. I remember you.
Yeah.
You probably remember 50 families, but they remember you.
And isn't that, I know you have faith, and isn't that, you know, the greatest command of love one another and just giving time to help to see someone, just loving them.
We're just holding a hand.
Jeff?
I would just like to say that I feel like God called me to you so many years ago. I worked with Jodi at the Edge. My third child, Adler, and Michael are about the same age. And I was like, wow, this woman is an amazing mother. She's doing all these crafts with her kids. And she said to me one day, let's ride the city bus with the kids. And I'm like, well, where are we going? Just ride the bus. And so we did this, and the memory on Facebook pops up all the time, and I think, man, that was just such a cool moment that I shared with Jodi. And so in my family, I have 3 family members that are bipolar, one is schizophrenic, and my mother has been depressed my whole life. I remember her having bouts of anger where there would be holes in the wall. I remember her being in bed for weeks, and I was like, why isn't she getting up? And so reading Jodi's book was just really like kind of eye-opening to what you went through, like what my family was going through, and my mom still to this day misses big things. Like she didn't come to my daughter's birthday party, and I would get the text the morning of, like, you know, I just can't get there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, just get out of bed. Like, get up, you know?
But this is what it doesn't.
So-
You can't pull yourself up sometimes, and it's hard for the family. And there are places in NAMI that, like I know my sister and my husband went to a workshop together to understand more about the illness because it runs in a family, and they wanted to understand because it's a really hard thing when you haven't felt so low that you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna take this all the pills. Maybe you don't really understand.
It was just, I really enjoyed reading your book, and a couple of years ago, I went through a traumatic event myself, and I just remember thinking, I don't want to get out of this bed, I don't want to be a mom, I don't want to be a wife, I don't want to go to the grocery store. What if I see somebody that I have to smile, right? Like, I don't really know kind of like what happened in their personal life, so, so thank you.
And they're still learning a lot about mental illness. I mean, there's the brain, they still don't know everything about the brain. Years ago, I mean, you didn't hear about kids in school having depression, but they must have. My sister said she was suicidal in high school. She didn't dare talk about it. She didn't know what was wrong with her.
And you know, my oldest, she's 19 now, she was in elementary school, and I noticed these depressive kind of episodes or just tendencies kind of, and I had asked the school counselor, I was like, I think she would benefit from extra counseling or like a big sister type of role. And this counselor looked at me and she says, well, we reserve them for kids from broken homes. So here I am with a house, a husband, everything seems fine. And then in middle school, again, the same thing. Well, she's on honor roll. I'm like, well, that doesn't mean that she's not.
That's really disappointing, isn't it?
She does suffer from some mental illness now.
Is she getting help?
She's not at the moment because she doesn't need it. And ever since she was, even in this was way before she was 18, I advocated for her, but she didn't want it. So that was that.
I have 3 boys. My oldest is almost 33. My middle son is 28. And my youngest is 14. And for the last maybe 4 years, once a week in therapy. He doesn't have depression. I haven't seen signs of it. But I have a severe illness, and he knows that I hear voices. And I said, when we went in there, I said, this is someone that you can say anything you want to, and it doesn't do that to me. And he said, I could say the F word here. And the therapist said, I can't, but you can. But it's just so, you know, and how does it affect family? That's probably what a lot of you go through when you know someone, you know of someone or someone in your family that has a mental illness, you don't know what to do.
I just want to say this, it's very important to notice your family, because my sister and brother were very much older than I was. I was a spoiled brat. I was born 14 years after my sister. And when we were growing up, or when I was grown up, and visiting them, my sister and her husband always had a big July 4th party. And everybody in the neighborhood was there because the parade went right by their house.
Mm-hmm.
And my nieces had been telling me that something was going on with their mother, and they couldn't, pinpoint it. So they asked me if I would come down, and I said, sure. And my sister and I got along really well, and we were having fun at the party, and my sister was very social, very outgoing, very extroverted, which I guess I was too. But I noticed that she was kind of withdrawn that day, which was very unusual for her. And I can remember going up to her and saying, are you okay? Are you having fun? And she said, we've got to do laundry. And I said, what? She said, we've got to do the laundry. And it just hit me then that she could not communicate with her friends anymore. She had lost that ability to join the crowd.
Yeah.
So we did the laundry. And not only that, we had to hang it out. But that was the beginning of her Alzheimer's.
And that was dementia, right? Alzheimer's.
And it was just,
You didn't say,
No.
that's silly.
no.
You went and did
We
laundry.
did the laundry.
And that's what we're all here trying to talk about, that sometimes just being next to someone, sitting next to them, listening if they have something they want to say, that makes a difference.
Really validating people and what they're feeling at that time means everything.
Mhm.
You were talking about this point here about when people were in school, in the, I don't want to say old days because, I'm not the word there. And we didn't hear a lot about depression, but the truth is that they didn't think kids could be depressed then. They said, oh, it doesn't happen until you hit puberty. So like I started showing depression as a young kid, and they were all like, oh, there must be something going on in the house, or so they got my whole family involved in therapy, and it just caused more problems because my sister was like, well, she's the one with the problem, not me. And so it caused resentment, and now I see so many other things that reach out to children that say, look, you can. I mean, it's a chemical imbalance, anybody can have it. And it's very inspiring, because I had my first hospitalization at 15. And I came back to school, and nobody should have known where I was. And the very first day, somebody comes up to me and he says, so I hear you were in the nut house, we're trying to commit Harry. And, 30 years later, I still remember that. And it's good that people like you, Jodi, are building those bridges so that that doesn't happen. That it's not this big deal when somebody needs help. That it's just normal. That I think that's really important to, until we get to the place where we can help our kids, we can't help our adults. Because our adults, we're those kids. And we're just causing more trauma to them instead of helping them. And I think it's really important that like NAMI and you and just that people share that.
That saying it's okay to not be okay. And you know, the meds, my brother struggled, I can't even tell you how many years. And he did everything he could. But the meds sometimes just messed him up even more. I mean, he would get off his meds. Then when he felt good and the meds were working, then he didn't stop taking his meds because he thought it was okay. It's just a real pattern.
In my 20s, I was in a day program while my husband worked, and in the 90s, which it was, I was on some really heavy medication that I pretty much sat just catatonic, and they had us doing crafting and stuff during the day, and I said, finally I said, I can't do this anymore. And there was someone there, the nurse that was my therapist at the time. It wasn't a very positive experience because she wanted me to do the crafts. She wanted me to submit. She wanted me to just sit and stare out the window. And she said, if you don't do this, I'm going to send you to Waterbury. And so the medicine didn't help at the time, and the therapy didn't help at the time. But now we can talk about those things and say, when it doesn't happen, we still need to make noise. We need to move. We need to say, and if you have a therapist that's not working, there's 1,000 of them.
Yes, that's what people
Find
say.
another.
I'm Tammy, I'm Jodi's little bit older sister. I just wanted to thank you for all you're doing, and for you to know that you are helping so many people, and that I am very proud of you, and that you are my support. I have a bipolar son, and Jodi is there to help me with him. And I just want you to know your worth and how much you really are affecting all of us, and all that you're helping us, and I love you.
Thank you. Yes.
Did you ever watch the movie A Beautiful Mind?
Yes.
What'd you think of that?
Well, I do know that in actual fact he heard voices, he didn't see things. And that's kind of like how I treat the voices, as if it's just noise, the neighbors. Just because at the end of the movie, A Beautiful Mind, there was a man who heard, he saw people in the movie, like he really heard voices in real life. And he would, in the movie, he would see them, but he wouldn't engage with them. And I found that if I talk back to the voices, they get louder.
Oh.
When I say no, or I say, then it increases, and then I get stuck hearing more. So I do know that I'm not engaging in it, and doing a lot of like mindful breathing, like being very calm. There are some places, like I've been in church before, and the voices are really loud. I have to get up and go downstairs and just sit. Or I'll be somewhere. I haven't really been able to work full time for a long time because there were times when if I hear voices, I want to run. And when you're on the clock, you can't run.
Yeah, right.
And so I work part time and kind of make my own hours right now. And I write. And I'm currently working on a fantasy novel, which is really exciting.
I just have to say, Jodi, I think that the good Lord has given you an incredible talent to be able to, I mean, talk about a beautiful mind, to articulate in your poetry, because I've been on a retreat with you where you just were writing poems about the adoration, like, wow, in a moment she wrote, you know, just beautiful. And you've got a great personality, you're very warm. I just think, like your sister said, you are affecting a lot of people, and you're doing God's will. And He's given you this, and He knows the challenges are hard, but you are doing it, and your reward will be great, I'm sure. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you all being here and coming here to listen. And are there any more questions? Anyone have any thoughts or anything they want to say?